Hi, this is Scott Harney from Esoteric Guides. I'm really pleased today to be interviewing Brother ADA, also known as Agostino Thaumaturgo. Originally from Queens, he's been a student of Christian spirituality and magic for almost 30 years. He specializes in theology and orthodox methods of manifestation. After being ordained as a traditionalist Catholic priest in 2002 and consecrated a bishop in 2007, he learned even more but returned to the magical community because exoteric ministry just wasn't for him. So Jason is author of a number of books, and I actually have a number of them, including Magic of Catholicism, which really is a classic in really grounded mystical traditions. He's also written books on Christian candle magic, occult lineages within the traditional Roman Catholic movement, medieval rituals of Catholic exorcism, and also he's re-released his everyday prayer book, which I also have. It's excellent, and we're going to talk about that later. Without further ado, let's introduce Jason. Here we go. Jason, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's great to be here, Scott.
Yeah. So I guess we can start out like yourself. Your background is very interesting. You're originally from Queens, now based in Ohio. Maybe give the listeners a little bit of an idea of like how your spiritual evolution from priest, you're still a priest, and also your interest in the occult dimensions of Catholicism.
No, I would say my interest in the esoteric and the occult is probably lifelong. So if I had to pinpoint an age, it would be age 6. There is a bookstore on Main Street in Flushing that used to be there called Stargazers. My parents used to go in there. That's where the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck that I've shown before, that I've had in my household for like 46 years, that's where it came from. And several other books I have on my bookshelf. So that's where my first interest came from, my first awareness. When I was 12, my father, he got involved in a place called Mountaintop here in Dayton. We moved to Ohio in 81, just so we have the timeline right. So my father was always a natural psychic. He was very good at what he did, and he got involved at a bookstore called Mountaintop, where for about 6 years he would do readings, he would teach classes, and he would do one-on-one counseling sessions. So that's how my actual contact with the metaphysical community came about. So I'm learning here. I'm finding my parents' books that they bought from Stargazers. Found those in the basement, started reading those. I think my first was, where are you? I pull out a whole bunch of books to show, and then I end up not pulling out the right ones. Go figure. So I think the first one I read was Ophiel's Art and Practice of Astral Projection, which, yeah, you can even see the little thing right here. Okay, I think that's the first one I read. I started reading books on Kabbalah. I started reading books on visualization. And of course, there was a whole thing about crystals and all that at Mountaintop. So that's where a lot of my early learning came from. Of course, there was always talk, too, about Catholicism being a magical religion. If you look at Mysteria Magica by Melita Denning and Osborne Phillips, they have like a footnote where they talk about the order of the Mass and how it meets the house of sacrifice style of ritual construction. So you'll actually find all this talked about in the occult community, but not in as much detail. My understanding with the Mass itself, actually with Catholicism itself, it came in 1996 when I actually started reading and analyzing the Catholic rituals themselves. I'll start with the Roman ritual. This is a 3-volume edition. This is volume 3. If you open to the very introduction, the translator, Philip Weller, he has this very beautiful introduction. I don't think he realizes it. He's actually defining Catholic magic in detail. It's an excellent description of how man was sanctified by Christ and creation is sanctified through man. Talk about how items are dedicated, items are used. And the blessings themselves, many of them are, for example, the blessing of candles. Candles are blessed to cast out darkness, to cast off evil. Holy water is blessed. It's not blessing the person that will have the object like modern liturgy does, but the object itself is blessed as a form of talismanic magic to keep out demons, to heal sickness, to forgive sins, i.e., to purify the person who uses it, and so on and so forth. So that's when my real epiphany took place. That's also when I started studying theology, when I started paying closer attention. And from there, the lead up is pretty much takes us to where we are now.
So, yeah, so that's fascinating. Ophiel is really a fascinating character as well. I have a number of his books. Very low profile, but really profound mystic. So, so you actually became a priest. And when you say traditional priest, do you also is that Latin? You mean Latin Mass? Is that what?
Yes, actually, I think that needs some clarification because the word traditionalist has become a little, how to say, a little fuzzy over the past 20 years or so. Okay,
Mhm.
at the time, I was ordained in 2002. At the time, you had Latin masses that were quote in union with Rome. They were under the Pope's auspices. But then you had the traditional movement. Now, most of these were smaller groups that they had nothing to do with Rome. It was Latin Mass, no meat on Fridays, and Vatican II was treated like a huge conspiracy theory. I was ordained and I practiced my ministry inside the context of those groups.
So, but eventually you became involved in what you call occult Catholicism, and some could say that Catholicism in general is very occult. So, how do you define occult Catholicism?
Okay, okay. The way I would define it, applied mystical theology. That's like probably the shortest definition. The longer definition is applied theology. I define magic in general as applied theology because theology is faith-seeking understanding, or as Paul Tillich put it, the rational inquiry into the contents of one's faith. You're seeking to understand your beliefs. All magicians operate by taking what they understand about what they believe, or their understanding of the universe, and putting that into action.
I have just a lot of questions about, you know, I mean, I see the Catholic Church as a complete sort of system with a very powerful egregore. I mean, you can feel it when you walk in the church. I mean, you have the saints, you have the martyrs, you have, people that, saints that are still, you're able to contact them, through ritual and through candles and all that. But my question is, I noticed that in traditional Catholicism, for instance, the angels are a bit different than the angels in, say, Golden Dawn. For instance, Uriel is missing from most Catholic books. Um, I noticed in your book, though, Uriel is there. You want to explain a little bit about, like, maybe some of the angelology of the Catholic Church as compared to some of the occult groups?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the occult groups. Since you mentioned the Golden Dawn, they tend to base their angelology on Jewish angelology, which is where you have the list of the orders of the Oh, great! Now I'm forgetting. Can't believe I'm forgetting things now. But that's where you have the list of the orders through the 10 Sephiros of the Tree of Life, and the order that they're in. That's the Jewish order for angelic choirs. The Catholic order actually comes from the Pseudo-Dionysius of the Areopagite, his celestial hierarchies from the 5th century. That's where you have the seraphim, the cherubim, the thrones, or the Arlim, the powers, virtues, the archangels, the angels, and so on. The nine orders. Okay, so that's the first difference. Okay, the second difference you asked about the archangel Uriel. Now this actually gets misunderstood on the entire Catholic internet. It gets misunderstood because everybody wants to say Pope Zachary in was it 745 at a council in Rome simply forbade any mention of angels who were not explicitly named in Scripture. And the three mentioned in the canonical scriptures, canonical and deuterocanonical, would be Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. The actual truth, I have an entire blog post where I describe this in detail. The actual truth is it was Charlemagne. It was I'm trying, it's been years since I wrote this. The Admonitio Generalis, I believe, is where he wrote this, where he basically attempted to legislate what the churches can and can't do. That attempt was pretty successful because he wanted one right throughout his entire realm. And in this Admonitio, he cites the Roman Council, says, nope, the only angels that may be mentioned are Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. And that's where it stuck because he gave it the force of law.
That's interesting. Yeah. So in reading your work, a big thing that drew me to it, and I think draws a lot of people to it, is the whole focus on sort of the psychic self-defense and also exorcism. I know you have the big book of exorcisms, and so what is your view? So, well, first of all, as a Catholic practitioner of magic, what are the most important elements of psychic self-defense, of psychic well-being?
Okay, the most important, it's very, I would say it's a case of as above, so below. It's just like with physical self-defense. If you don't want to get a disease, you keep yourself clean, you look after your hygiene, you look after what you eat, and so on and so forth. Or if you don't want somebody to break in the middle of the night, you lock your doors. Okay, that's the physical. But still below. The as above part is in order to protect yourself, first off, you want to live as virtuous a life as you can. You want to keep your spiritual connections. But you want to be careful who you associate with, because you never know what somebody's into, what they might try to get you into, or what they might try to do, what they might try to do spiritually or magically if you disappoint them or turn them down. You want to be very careful with what type of how do I want to say this? I'm starting to sound like an old prude, and I really don't want to do that because I'm not. You want to be careful with what you let into your life, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. That doesn't mean you want to be ignorant. That doesn't mean you don't want any entertainment. Doesn't mean no distraction. Lord knows I'm the opposite of that. But you want to be careful. You want to make sure it doesn't control you. You want to make sure that it doesn't have a hold on you. And you want to make sure that people who might have a questionable energy about them, that they don't have a chance to get a hold or an influence on you too. Those are probably some of the best. Those are probably the best steps to as a preventative self-defense, preventative protection.
So I notice, in various occult groups, it can be a slippery slope. You start off benignly, and next thing you know, you're doing, goetic work, right? And then next thing you know, you're summoning goetic entities, demons. So, and before you know it, you may be involved in something that's over your head. And I think some of these groups, it's by design. I mean, I think it is to sort of not trick you, but yeah, they want the energy of the follower. So I think you actually get tricked into some of this stuff. In Catholic magic, what are the red lines? In other words, someone who's Catholic who's interested in the occult, where literally now with the internet, anything goes. I mean, it's amazing what people are putting out there now. Selling your soul, making pacts with demons. So obviously there's a common sense thing involved, but from a Catholic point of view, what are the occult red lines, would you say?
Okay, I've actually been pulling away from occultism and more towards esotericism for that exact reason. Like some of the stuff out there I see is like they make the exoteric church look right. Okay, the hard line is considered friendship with the demon. All right, it's one thing to talk to demons in a sense of I'm commanding you to go away, i.e., exorcism. That's one thing. That's a holy work. However, if you're making friends with the demons in order to say, bring me bags of money or make me win the lottery, or you're making pacts with them, which could include any number of things, that's the line. It could fit under either demonolatry, which is technically speaking worship of the demon, or demonolatry, which could be anywhere from reverence to the demon or just being friends with the demon. Because ultimately, and this is how Catholicism views this, And this is actually how we could probably point to examples, so I don't want to mention names. We've seen how a person, they quote, become friends with the demon. Okay, the demon, Malachi Martin talked about this in his Hostage to the Devil, might offer them some kind of power or some kind of the illusion of power, like maybe precognition or clairvoyance or something like that. So they can think, hey, I'm this powerful person. I want to be friends with this demon. I want to cooperate with this spirit. And then what happens is they end up becoming terminally ill, or some kind of sickness happens. All the gains they had were taken away from them. And the demon base has a moment where they can go, gotcha. That there might be magicians who can avoid that, but in my experience and in the experience of many others, this is usually the long-term result of people that get involved with demons. So that's why that's a hard line. It effectively protects the person from themselves.
So someone who was involved in the occult, okay, and I see this a lot. I mean, even Eddie Basinski, the founder of the Minoan Brotherhood, I mean, at the end of his life, he ended up returning to the Catholic Church. So someone who was in really in the occult maybe made some connections with some spirits that they probably shouldn't have done. How would you work with them? Like, how would you say within your system that they can sort of break those chains of bonds?
The first step. I was actually having this conversation in the chat after Mass yesterday. Okay, the first step is they have to want to break those chains. If they don't truly want it, then there's always going to be that chance of going back. There's always going to be that chance of those bonds having some kind of a hold on them. So it starts with conscious desire. It has to be sincere desire. After that, because classic demonology tells us that contracts with the demon are always invalid. I don't know if we're talking contracts. I don't know if we're talking egregoric feeding into. Let me word that, like being in the hooks of an egregore or being under the hooks of a group. But it starts with wanting to break out. Another step is dissociation, because a lot of this is pretty much what you do, what you do in your day-to-day life. Disassociate from the group. Have as little contact as possible. Like if you have to interact with somebody in the workplace, for example, you do what you have to do, but minimize your contact. A lot of prayer. Definitely a lot of prayer. Exorcism as needed. For some people, it's not really necessary. For other people, there are spirits that are on them that really need to be chased away. And it's really a case of, once again, living your life for what you want to be, rather than living your life for what you used to be. So instead of falling back on habits when you were in whatever occult group, you fall into habits of being a good Catholic or being a good whatever denomination you're into now, because it's not just Catholicism that's seeing this uptick. But ideally, you work on the practice of virtue, you work on the reduction of vice. The two have to go hand in hand. And you work on getting your spiritual life in order and getting your connection to God in order. That's probably the shortest answer I can give. Anything beyond that, that's like a general pattern. Anything beyond that has to be discussed on a case-by-case basis for what's going on with the individual.
So a lot of cultists say, well, a demon is just a part of our mind, or a demon, it may be sort of an ancient deity that the church has sort of rebranded as a demon. What is your definition of a demon, one, and what about older deities? Because a lot of the pagan groups are, for instance, Hecate and these type of deities. What's your opinion as a Catholic occultist?
That's two separate questions. So let me answer those in order. Okay, the first one, that comes to me as the distinction between the psychological model and the spirit model, which is still debated amongst occultists. I I believe that both models are complementary, but I side with the spirit model. Yes, yes, demons are actual entities in and of their own right. They exist exterior to us. They have their own minds. They have their own personalities. Okay, so that's the short answer. The answer with ancient deities that the church rebranded as demons, that's kind of a mixed bag. Because we have to look first off into what are the ancient deities. And there are actually a few. The church does not have an exact answer for that. There's no exact answer. They could have been a spirit whom this or that people that this or that people chose to get into friendship with, chose to worship. Some may have been demonic, some may have been non-demonic. They could have been figments of maybe the group's first high priest imagination that formed their own egregore. The church doesn't really have a category for egregores. That's something that has to be. I'll probably get into that later, but they don't have a category for egregores or energy, though there is a way to theologize that. But so some may be egregores, some may be spirits, some are demonic, not demonic. Some might just be figments of the imagination. So it's really difficult to say that this was that deity whom the church rebranded as a demon, though there were times when, yes, they did say, because some people did believe that pagan deities were demons. Other people didn't. There's no definitive declaration on that whatsoever from the church. So you basically have everybody's opinions just competing with each other.
So this actually, when you mentioned older deities and other cult groups, I know there's in certain occult circles, Saint Cyprian is a big issue right now. A lot of occultists have adopted a part of the Catholic Church with Saint Cyprian, not all of it. So what's your view in Saint Cyprian, the occult version of Saint Cyprian that many occultists now have on their altars?
Honestly, I'm surprised you're not subscribing to Saint Justina, because Cyprian, for all his power, he got his butt handed to him by a girl. That's what I honestly think. I think Justina is the one people should be looking to, because a lot of what I understand of the Cyprian cultists, they're looking at him as he was this powerful magician, he was this powerful spellcaster, but he was hired to make Justina fall in love with the client. All Justina did was make a sign of the cross, and the entity he sent was sent away. He converted based on the strength of that, because the entity said, look, she's working with a power much greater than I. Cyprian says that I will go worship that power. So what I think of this, if they are looking to Cyprian as a patron of black magic so they can be better black magicians, I have a severe problem with that, because that's not what Cyprian's life was about post-conversion. That's not what made him a saint. I also think Adam Pearson, also Frater SFCV, I think he goes under, on his blog, he once mentioned that he had messages from St. Michael, which told him there are multiple spirits impersonating Cyprian. Some spirits are benevolent, some spirits are not benevolent. I tend to agree with Adam on that. He got a lot of flack at the time. I tend to agree with him, like very strong agreement with him, because from the people I've encountered that have a quote Cyprian interaction, they do seem to be talking to different spirits. Maybe some are talking to egregores and not spirits. I'm not 100% certain. But no, I'm not a fan of Cyprian devotion. I'm definitely not a fan of Cyprian as patron of black magic. I'm just not a fan of the cultist that's been brought up around that.
Yeah, that's it's an interesting phenomena right now. It's sort of a fad, I think. Another interesting fad also in the occult community, and I'm seeing, and this is sort of based upon what's happening culturally in Mexico, is the whole Santa Muerte, devotion. I have a friend who's in Mexico now, and he said, like everywhere he turns, Santa Muerte statues are there, and it's sort of the syncretism between like this older deity and the Catholic Church. So some Catholics embrace Santa Muerte, others see it as sort of more of a pagan deity. What's your opinion on this?
I absolutely do not embrace Santa Muerte. That's my short opinion. I have done enough exorcism cases of people who they made a deal. They made a deal with her, and either they welched on the deal, or that either they did that, or maybe they did something that was just minorly wrong. I guess I don't know how I don't have a way to describe it as one size fits all, because again, this is all individuated. But I've had my share, maybe about 5 cases, to be honest with you, about 5 cases of people that they made a deal with her and it didn't quite go as expected or intended. So no, I cannot endorse.
So, well, that brings up another interesting point. You do exorcisms regularly for people. What would be your criteria of taking an exorcism case?
Okay, I'm going to clarify a little bit. I don't take active cases now. I was up until a few years ago.
Okay.
Okay, okay, just in case one of your listeners may be struggling. I don't want to give them the wrong expectations. I will happily give referrals if they contact me.
Mhm. Okay. But you
Okay.
do have a lot of literature on. Do you suggest someone who does have a problem to try to do an exorcism on themselves, or should they actually seek a practitioner?
There actually are books from the 17th century with self-exorcism formulae. There's one I'm working. There's one that I'm working on translating as we speak. So it is possible to do an exorcism on yourself. It is possible for a layperson to do exorcism. This is pretty well documented in the pre-Vatican II literature on the subject.
Mhm.
However, and I want to get back to your previous question also because I didn't completely answer it. However, if they have any doubts, or if it is a stronger entity than they could handle, I would strongly recommend that they do seek out a priest. I would strongly recommend they seek some sort of professional help to assist them with the case. Because sometimes it's a case where you can handle on your own, easy peasy. Other times it's a case where a lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client. Discretion is the better part of valor. Now, your previous question was, what criteria would I have before taking on a case? Is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. The criteria that I have, that I had, or that I have before referring, I need to be at least morally certain that it is spiritual activity. I need to be at least morally certain, and that it's not just because sometimes though people, like one time I had a phone call. A friend of mine was at doctor's appointment. I'm in the waiting room. I answer my phone and Father Jason, I have Satan inside of me. That was the first thing that was said. I vetted, and I believe that the individual doing this, I wasn't sure, but I suspected the individual was dealing with some personal things that needed attention. That's my suspicion. Okay, I referred the case. I didn't take it on personally. But some cases, there are people that they'll clearly possess so they can get attention. That's actually more common than not. There are cases where the Roman ritual says you have to distinguish between possession and mental illness. There are times where they run side by side. So I need to make sure that even if the person might be mentally ill, I need to make sure that there is still spiritual activity along with that. Because if you write somebody off just because they have a psych diagnosis, you are leaving an entire field of attack wide open that nobody deserves. So I basically just need to rule that out. I need to rule out self-deception. I need to rule out hallucination. I need to rule out seeking attention. I need to rule out medical diagnoses. And when I was doing cases, I had a psychologist that I worked with in order to help rule this out. I need to rule out things like maybe radon gas in the home is causing certain things to happen. So I need to rule these sorts of things out before I take a case.
So, what would you think? Because it seems to me there is an uptick in possession cases, or at least people who perceive themselves to be possessed. That's according to the Catholic Church. Um, what do you think this uptick is the reason for it is? Why suddenly people are they just more aware, or are they doing something that is attracting this kind of energy?
Okay, I don't think. Okay, well, I don't. I think it's a mixed bag. On the one hand, I don't think it's an uptick in actual cases, so much as The church spent from about, 1965, 1969 or so, up until 2005, going out of their way to deny exorcisms. Like, it might exist in theory, but demon possession doesn't happen in practice. That's the stance they took. And so after 2005, when they started admitting, okay, Father Amor, he started talking about exorcism cases. The new rite of exorcism came out in 1999. The school for exorcism in Rome opened up, and they started talking about it again. What I think happened then, it's not so much the number of cases or number of demonic attacks went up, but people were actually, they felt more free to talk about it. So I think the number of people talking about it went up because a lot of that we don't do this was gone. It was, we do this now, we will help you.
Right, I see. I think the power. I think the power of the Catholic Church and the priests doing the exorcism as well, because it seems like a lot of groups are now offering exorcism, but they do not have that apostolic succession. Do you want to talk a little bit about the power of the apostolic succession that a priest has, and the egregore and the power of the Church?
Okay, yes, but I do want to mention about exorcism. Okay, you don't have to be a priest in order to do an exorcism, because the power to do exorcism comes from baptism.
Okay.
Jesus himself says this in the very last verses of the Gospel of Mark. These signs will follow those who believe and are baptized, and one of them is casting out evil spirits. And I can go to moral theology as recently as 1944, where it's discussed the distinction of public versus private exorcism. Public or solemn exorcism is only done by a priest for the sake of good order. Private exorcism, which could use any ritual except for the Roman ritual, the ritus exorcizandus, it could be done by any baptized person whatsoever. The restrictions, they only came about in 1985. India Badiquat Annos is the name of the document. And that was more for a case of people can try exorcism without knowing what they're doing. They can do more damage to themselves. And so that was meant to get that under control. Okay, so that's the long and short. For more information about the sources on a layperson doing exorcism, I would recommend the Big Book of Exorcisms. I have a lot about that in the front matter, where I actually give the theologians and the authorities who talk about it. Okay, apostolic succession. Apostolic succession is actually held by bishops rather than priests. There are some conflicting theories on that, but the mainstream theory centers on the bishop. What apostolic succession does, and I explained this in the was it chapter 2 of Magic of Catholicism, where the other word for bishop is pontifex in Latin, and a pontifex is a bridge builder, literally from the word pons, which means bridge, pons pontis, and fex is a suffix meaning builder. So the bishop is the bridge. So apostolic succession works as the bridge. The bishop is the bridge builder. He builds the bridge, and he stands on the bridge between us now and the line of the apostles, the bishop who consecrated him and so on, going back to one of the apostles and ultimately to Jesus. So he is a bridge that connects the faithful. I don't want to say connects the faithful to God, but he's the institutional connection that connects the faithful to God. He's also the institutional connection that manifests and carries and safeguards the spiritual powers that Jesus gave to the church. So the bishop has the ability to perform or confect all of the sacraments, all 7 of them, as well as all of the sacramentals. Where the priest figures into this is the office of the priesthood came about in the late first century. My apologies. The late first century, where Christianity was growing so fast that the bishops needed somebody to assist them. They had already ordained the deacons to help with the charitable work of the church, whereas the priest came in as a second rank of assistants who could perform some of the sacraments. The main thing that separates the priest from the layperson in terms of spiritual ability is the ability to absolve sins and the ability to confect or to cause transubstantiation to happen in the Eucharist. That's the main difference. A layperson can confect baptism and matrimony. A priest can do those plus the Eucharist and absolution of sin. A bishop can do those plus ordaining other priests and bishops. That's the general that's the general layout of how apostolic succession works and what it provides.
So in your book, Magic of Catholicism, which I'd highly recommend to anyone interested in this subject, getting started, okay, for someone who does want to, really get involved in this, like live their life according to the Catholic mystical means, esoteric means. You give a number of different ways of getting started. I think the rosary, daily rosary, is really important. What are some of the other holy water, prayer, obviously, creating a sanctum? What is the other important elements that one needs in their life to practice this kind of magic?
Okay, the most important element, it goes right back to what we talked about with spiritual and psychic self-defense. The most important element is getting your life in order. Like the more you have your life in order, mundanely and spiritually, the better you position yourself as a practitioner. So it's a so as most of what I mentioned in there it holds. Developing your prayer life, having whatever objects, like we're talking about the candles, the table, and all that I mentioned in there. That depends on whether you're actually going to use it. Not everybody needs to use everything, but at least a regular scheduled prayer. The rosary I recommend because it's a complete system of magical training. You have it's meditation, you have visualization, you have concentration exercise, and you even have a system with what I've called the expanded method, the actual system for manifestation. So that's why I hype the rosary so much, because it is so complete. But yeah, what I put in the book, it's pretty complete. It's just a question of what exact specific methods you want to use when you're working on your practice.
So I also recently purchased your book of everyday prayer. It's published by Lulu Press. It's a really big book. It's a great book. Um, yes, that's it. It is. I mean, you can't get any more comprehensive than that. That has everything in it. And one of your postings, which really intrigued me, was this book is also functions as a grimoire. Um, so could you explain a little bit more about that?
Okay, if I explain that, it would defeat the purpose, because the
Uh,
purpose is an intentional blind.
mhm,
The best I could describe is for those who are ready for it, they'll see it right away.
mhm,
It's designed that they'll see it right away. For those who aren't ready for it, like say you take the book, like the book has the complete order of the Latin Mass with it. It's got a hand missal for Sundays.
mhm,
Suppose you take this book with you to a Latin Mass. The person next to you in the pew, if they look at it, all they'll see is just a regular book of prayers.
mhm.
So as a ready-made grimoire, it works that way. But when the time comes that you see there's something in there, that there's something you need, and if you're perusing the book, it's designed that it will just reach out and it will hit you when the time comes that a reader is ready for it.
Yeah. Sort of when the teacher is, when the student is ready, the teacher will come aspect. But you got to
Yes.
work with the book. You got to work with this material. Go to the masses. Do you recommend daily mass?
Actually, I'm not going to say yes or no to that, because personally, I like daily mass.
Mm-hmm.
I like daily mass. I say mass on an almost daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't this morning because the Monday after Easter is almost always my day off every year.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Holy Week just tends to be crazy, and you just gotta take some time. Okay, daily mass, I would recommend it, but I would not say it's required, because it's not required.
Sure.
But at the very least, weekly.
You're in the Magic of Catholicism. You have a listing of saints and their attributes, including the colors and the liturgical color, the devotional color, and the symbols. Um, so I know, like my family has their own patron saint, and a lot of families and people do. How does one choose a patron saint, or is that chosen for you in your
It
experience?
could be an either or. Sometimes it's a case where an individual will choose their patron saint. For example, suppose somebody is given a relic of Saint Alphonsus of Liguori. I'm going to mention him because I have a relic of him on my altar. Okay, so suppose somebody's given a relic of St. Alphonsus. Oh, they read, oh, I like him. I want him to be my patron saint. I would like for him to be my patron saint. So that goes by, you study, you read, you pray, and you attempt to enter into a dialogue. Like you set up a spot on your, if you have a home altar, you set up a spot on your home altar for devotion to St. Alphonsus. And you set up a dialogue, for lack of a better way to put it. Set up a dialogue, you order your life in a manner that hopefully he would approve, to the best of your ability here in the modern world, that is. And eventually he'll let you know he picked up the phone. Sometimes, however, your patron saint chooses you. And they have different personalities. Some saints, like I've heard it said that St. Augustine, for example, is a tough nut to crack. Exact quote that was said to me. There are some saints that will be more willing to talk to you than others. Like there's one that for some reason is not super willing to talk to me, though he is very much within the general area of what I do. I'm not going to mention names. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes you choose, sometimes they choose. And in that case, you have to be the one to pick up the phone. You have to realize, hey, I'm being messaged here. I have to answer and say, yes, I accept this, or I don't accept this, which I don't recommend, but you still have the option.
So, in looking over the names of saints, actually, two things come to mind. I remember when I used to live in East Boston, there was a social club. It was the local mob hangout, and I used to always try to peek in, and the whole place had different saints in it, Catholic saints. I thought that was always interesting. The other issue is, and again, with my Catholic background, I'm very interested in the saints, but the Botanicas in New York City. I wrote about them in my book, Esoteric Guide to New York. Queens, Bronx, Brooklyn, full of Catholic saints. And I'm looking here. Saint Lazarus is one big one. But then when you delve deeper, you can realize like Saint Barbara is actually Chango in Orisha. So it seems like some of these saints have been synchronized or sort of adopted through the ancient Yoruba religion. What's your opinion on that?
I have no expertise on it. No,
Mm.
I actually, I had a friend. His father. This is way back in the day. He passed in 2010. Okay, actually, I'm not going to tell a full story, but he actually mentioned he had a patronage because he said his patrons were Shango and Oya, and Shango and Yemaya,
Mm.
and he explained Saint Barbara. Now, however, that's not my expertise. I don't know enough. I don't think to respond intelligently. Yet the syncretisms can be found. Like sometimes the syncretism is to protect your practice against prying eyes.
Mhm.
I mean, and a parallel example of that we found in the song 12 Days of Christmas, where English Catholics, the 12 Days of Christmas was a catechism song just in case the Protestants were trying to sniff out Catholics that could be sent to the gallows or whatever. So you did that as a way to pass on your faith. Or we could say in Eastern Orthodoxy under Ottoman occupation, it was very common. This is an Orthodox friend told me it was very common that they would just act like they were talking about artwork and talking about drawings as a way of teaching the faith on to the young, in case the Ottomans were watching. So it makes sense to me that in terms of the African traditional religion, syncretizing with this or that Catholic saint, if I understand correctly, and I probably don't, that's my disclaimer, it would make sense to fit as a parallel instance of attempting to protect your beliefs while protecting yourself and your loved ones against prying eyes from those who, let's just say, don't share those beliefs, and put it that way.
Well, I find it fascinating, and I think one of the things that makes New York special is the whole syncretism of some of these faiths. It's wonderful. The modern world, it seems, and I've just read an article that what is it called, Gen Z or the millennials, a large portion of them are now returning to traditional Catholicism, and it seems like more and more people are moving more toward that. They see sort of modern society as spiritually empty. Are you seeing this yourself? More of a return to traditional Catholicism?
Partially, I don't really work a lot with Generation Z. I tend to work more with Generation X and older millennials. So this might be a little bit outside of the demographic I interact with the most. But I have been watching the numbers. Okay, the numbers of people, the numbers of conversions versus the numbers of people leaving. Okay, the numbers, they're not as high as the numbers were 25 years ago, but they are on a definite uptick. As far as modern society being spiritual empty, I think that's by design. Let me backtrack a bit, because modern post World War II society, post war society, people could talk about how people were more religious in the 1950s and all that. Then the 60s came and just sent the whole apple cart just crashing down. But the post World War II order, from the ground up, it was aggressively secularist. It was aggressively secularist, and the post World War II consensus, it did ultimately, it chased the spiritual out of our classrooms. It chased the spiritual out of school. Whether they waited for Madalyn Murray O'Hair to file a lawsuit to get Under God taken out of the pledge, or prayer out of school, or for somebody else to do it, the fact is that would not have passed had not the establishment on some level wanted it to happen in the first place. So I do think that modern society, if it is spiritually empty, it's because the spiritual has been chased out of the realm of the secular. However, that's the public space. The private space is never spiritually empty, because the human being, the human mind, the human heart, the human soul always has this desire for something greater than self, always has this desire for connection, always has this desire to be part of the whole. And as long as that desire is there, as long as that desire is there for more than what we can just see, touch, feel, smell, hear, there will always be some type of spirituality in the individual's life, whether they acknowledge it or not.
So how does one work with you? In other words, I know you have a Patreon. I'm a member of your Patreon channel. What's the best way to get involved in your community?
Okay, how to become part? Really, just say hello. Now, I am having problems on my Facebook right now with Facebook Messenger, so I recommend reaching me through email, agostino@thavmapub.com. I haven't been posting on my blog very much, because on the Thavma blog very much, because I'm pivoting towards the Fellowship of the Inner Fire. That's my current ministerial project. Everybody is welcome to have a look. Everybody's welcome to get a feel for what we're doing, and even drop in on Mass. We say Mass over Zoom on Sundays. Okay, everybody's more than welcome. See what else? But it really just starts with saying hi. Just say hi. Let me know you exist. Tell me something about yourself. Let me know what you're looking for. Let me know how I can help you. And I'm more than happy to make the time to do exactly that.
Well, that's interesting. Could you talk a little bit more about your new project, the Ministry of Interior Fire? It sounds fascinating.
Yeah, the Fellowship of the Inner Fire. Actually, it started by a pure accident. Okay, so I've been offering mass for individual and collective intentions for the past 3 years, since about September of 2022. What happened was, a number of people, because I always had Zoom on in case anybody wanted to participate or at least say the responses or anything of the sort. I always had a Zoom link that was on. So at this point, I had about 4 people that were joining. This is January of 2000. Actually, it was the Feast of the Epiphany, January 6, 2004. And this kid, I'm guessing kid because his voice sounded very young, he Zoom bombed us. He starts throwing on curse words, racial slurs. It was pretty horrifying. I actually had to stop what I was doing and just kick this guy out. I had to kick him out. Well, as a result, that night, the four of us, we started talking, and we realized we should build something out of this. We should build something out of this. We should promote individual spirituality. We should promote a form of esoteric Christianity that would fit within a small C Catholicism. And also, we have two entire generations that have grown up without any life skills. Like, they grew up without the functioning life skill. The life skills to be functioning adults. We should work on addressing that as well. And that's how the Fellowship of the Inner Fire was born. It was just out of that Zoom bombing. It created this wonderful conversation. Right now, we communicate primarily via Facebook chat. Mass is offered over Zoom. Actually, the Mass that you saw on Facebook Live yesterday, it is one of the Fellowship's Masses. How do I describe this? More information can be found at Fellowship of the Inner Fire, oneword.wordpress.com. And I definitely look forward to any further engagement, any further interest, any further interaction. Anybody that's interested in what we have to offer, I look very forward to talking to you and hearing from you.
Oh, that's really important. Community is so important, particularly nowadays, and coming together with like minds and finding your tribe. So I will definitely
It is.
put that in the links to the YouTube video, and also your main website, thavmapub.com, where you can
Yes.
find a lot of your actually PDFs of a lot of your books. Really, really amazing research you've done in body of work, and so much to learn. I mean, really great. But with great talk with you, I think it's been really, really enlightening. Any final words you want to mention to people who are interested in your work?
Actually, yes. Yeah, I'm saying this from a place of personal experience. I know what it was like when I was in the churches, even in the clergy, in ministry, questioning things, questioning narratives that I guess shouldn't be questioned, being and feeling like you're alone. Feeling like you're alone, feeling like you're the only person that's into this stuff. Everybody else is just, they're so focused on the exoterica, they're so focused on it could be anything from moral browbeating to just follow along in lockstep, pay, pray, and obey. You're not alone. There are a lot of us out here, and this is something I've learned through the past 11 years, actually past almost 30 years, if you include the Chocolate website back in 1998. You're not alone. There are a lot of us out here who've come to similar conclusions or the same conclusions. All you need to do is reach out. I've been terrible about responding. I am working on getting better about that. And anybody I've not responded to, I apologize. Reach out. Again, let me know you exist. Let me know that you want to talk. I'm going through previous messages and I will make a point to talk to you. This is a promise that I am making to you here publicly in front of this camera, in front of this altar. I look forward to hearing from you. Don't give up your faith. You don't need to give up your faith. Don't give up your belief in God. And don't let your faith be dictated by the opinions of those around you who may not be seeing quite what you're seeing.
Really appreciate the conversation this morning, and blessings. Thank you very much.